excited about our next guest because with all the talk as we've had over the last few months and weeks and seemingly the direction that the law and the movement is going, it's good to take it back to a part of the law that doesn't need any amending but needs, in fact, some kind of enforcing. Of course, I'm talking about the new conditions panel, and to help us talk about this is one of the members on the board, Dave Brogren. Dave, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
First of all, it's been 5 years, 6 years almost, that we have not had a new condition added to the list. I know we've been through a number of different, seemingly at times positive, cycles, but really with nothing that's come about. Give the listeners a little background in terms of what the efforts have been thus far and why there has been no changes to the list.
Well, we first met about a year and a half ago. Oh man, I'm getting an echo.
Sorry about that, Dave.
Can you fight through for a second? It usually goes away.
I think everyone is in good faith. Oh man, we have a terrible connection here.
Are you on a speakerphone by chance, Dave? Or are you getting that just on the regular phone?
I'm not on a regular phone.
I apologize for that. If you can maybe just speak into the mouth part.
I'll do my best. Okay. So we started meeting a year and a half ago. Essentially, everything was strongly considered but voted down for one reason or another, either because the submission wasn't good enough or because we didn't have a quorum. The quorum issue has been a major issue we've faced. It's hard to explain, but here's how it goes. There's two quorums. One quorum is required to have a meeting. Now, the number of members of the panel has changed, but for example purposes, let's use the second panel, which has 11 members. A quorum to have a meeting is 6 members. Now, once you have a meeting, there's a second quorum required on the vote, and that's based on the total number of membership, 11, and you need 6 people to vote in the affirmative to have a condition be considered positive and be sent to Director Arwood. Unfortunately, there were members of the panel who couldn't attend for truly legitimate reasons. I wouldn't want to cast any aspirations on them. And what happened is we would face situations where PTSD would be voted affirmative 7-2, 4-3, 5-2, different things like that. And for one reason or another, a technicality prevented it from being submitted to Director Arwood for his final up or down vote. I think this became frustrating to all the members on the committee, both the pro-marijuana people and the anti-marijuana people, because it became like a Groundhog Day situation where everyone continually had to come back to these meetings and go through the same vote again. And there was no real stronger debate. John Evans had done an amazing job. He submitted over 700 pages of documents that were really powerful stuff. The public testimony, of which Dr. Crocker and I were the only panel members who attended, was unbelievable. The people who came and bared their souls did so in a way that was like, it was painful to them. They didn't want to do it. No one would want to do that and have to explain how you felt. There was a lady today who testified today about sexual assaults and PTSD, and you know what? She was courageous, and her testimony was after the vote was taken, but nevertheless, it just amplified why the vote was so important. So today what happened is we voted 6-2 in favor of recommending medical marijuana to people who are diagnosed with post-stress syndrome, PTSD. This is the first psychological condition. This is clearly needed. It's clearly, you don't have to be smart at all to talk to the people who are victims of PTSD and realize they suffer tremendously. I sat through hearing after hearing when I heard people say, I just want to sleep. They just want the bad dreams to go away. I can't imagine being in that situation. I empathize with them totally, and I think so did people on the panel. And I think wise heads prevailed. And Dr. Davis, who's the chief medical examiner in Michigan, he has voted both yes and no because of different reasons, because he's a thoughtful person. And he voted in the affirmative today, and it was what put the vote over the top and sends it now to Director Stephen Arwood of Laura to get to make a unilateral decisions up or down. And I've never met Director Arwood. I have no idea what he'll do, but I hope he'll be thoughtful, and I hope he'll vote yes, because this is a medication that seems to help a whole lot of people who have PTSD for a number of varied reasons, and I respect the people who say that. And I sat through hours and hours of testimony from these people, and truthfully, I believe them.
Let me ask you, so there's been no conditions that have gotten out of the panel yet by which the director, whether it's Harwood or anyone else, has had an opportunity to vote. Is that right?
The director has not made a decision on anything. Nothing has been sent to the director for recommendation, which makes this even bigger. But, Michael, honestly, I think part of I'm not saying this to be critical of people, but part of the problem is that as a neophyte type of thing we're doing, because it's sort of new, even though it's late, I mean, I understand the criticisms that this should have been formed years ago, but beyond that point, some of the submissions, truthfully, were not able to carry vast support, even if they were good submissions. I would say to you, autism was a case in point, that in good faith it was put forth to the committee, but possibly we rushed it. Possibly it was rushed too far, and the research that was submitted was not substantial enough to make it a compelling case. I think, in truth, my opinion is autism is clearly something that medical marijuana can assist, especially for these.
If with new information, I mean, is it like, I mean, it's not like a race judicata, you're foreclosed, and you gotta. There's some standard of proof that you
appeal to Ingham County.
The way it works is this, okay, and Chad's well aware of this because we've talked about this endlessly. Presently, if a final vote, there's two votes. There's a preliminary vote and a secondary vote for our panel. If a condition does not make it to Director Arwood, like PTSD has, which nothing else has, then it goes into a rejected status. And then if somebody else submits that same thing again, Laura has to reject it because it's been decided on, and the people would have to go to circuit court in order to have it considered again. And that's the way it is. Now,
to be considered again? Is it to be considered again or to be approved?
To be considered again.
Or just to get back on
considered again. Yes. Now, look, I'm definitely an activist type person, but I have to tell you, I've been working with Laura directly, with Carol Engel, and who's one of the directors there, and she's been very, very cooperative as far as I can tell. I mean, I have no feelings that she's anything but forthright, and she has made it clear that they recognize that that's like one of the things that needs to be changed in the rules. So I'm hopeful that that some of these rough edges will be smoothed out over time. And I know that's not satisfactory because there's people who are not able to benefit by the program. But I do think that I don't think the state is totally against this program. I think the state is totally about rules and following protocol. And as long as we can try to stay within the grounds of their protocol, I think we can have some success. I think the PTSD thing was the case in point. John Evans, you can't imagine the hours this guy spent in the time frame of that, say, 2009, 2010 zone, where all of us were bustling around doing what we were doing. John was going from representative to representative's office, from senator to senator's office. He actually, when I was starting to lobby with Mary, he actually was hitting every single office, not like a few like we did. He hit every office. He was instrumental in the new conditions panel being put together at all. He was, as we all know, it was very late in coming together, and John was a yeoman on that.
He pushed it.
Now, for sure, but what he did was he set a standard, and now that standard is going to be such that people are going to have to recognize that when a new condition is submitted, really it needs to go before the whole community at large and have the best people work on it and make a submission be one that really counts. And I don't mean this to be critical of anybody. I mean this to be saying, this is how these doctors on the committee, and I'm on the committee too, but I'm not a technical person like that. I don't want to sound like that. But that's how it's being viewed. And I do believe that there are numerous other conditions that should be considered seriously. And I think autism is one of them. And I think that one needs to be brought back up. I really feel like I feel strongly that way.
Let me ask you something else, more on a policy situation. I don't know, you may not have heard my rant, but one of the things we're talking about on the show is the problems that attorneys are having at the Section 8 hearings, and of course these last two cases, Tuttles and Hartwick. I was ranting about how this issue's already kind of been resolved, and the limitations of the physicians really are to the extent of a First Amendment recommendation. And I remember in another Section 8 hearing, in the Conan v. Walters it's that the physician, just because they make the recommendation, the court held, doesn't mean they're imputed with the knowledge that after they make the recommendation, the person's actually going to go and get marijuana. Now, if you read Hartwick and Tuttles in that context, they're asking the doctors to not only make the recommendation, but know that they went out and got it, and then participate in, asking them and knowing how much they're supposed to use, how frequently they're supposed to use it, et cetera, which to me is way, way, way beyond what and we're talking about the doctor's liability with their DEA license. Nevertheless, and I remember a physician taking a position in court one time to something like this. Well, the state of Michigan has provided this list of various conditions. They're telling me what these conditions are that may benefit from the use of marijuana. I don't need to know how hepatitis C is affected by marijuana. I certainly don't need to know how much they need to use or how frequently they need to use it, because the state's already done that they're put a condition onto a list which tells me I don't need to be a specialist in any of these conditions. I'm just prepared to, have a bona fide relationship with the patient, and I'm prepared to make a recommendation, and that's it. What are your thoughts? I mean, what do you think the conditions panel, at the end of the day, what is their fundamental thing? Are they actually providing that? Are they doing that?
Well, so you were saying, I was going to say, I don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows.
There you go. That's one of my favorites, too.
But, I don't know. I mean, I think there's people who are pro and con and middle of the road on this panel. I truly believe they're all good people. I mean, I don't know them all personally or anything like that, but I mean, we've had tense moments. There was a tense moment today, but I basically think they all are trying to do the same thing. I don't think anybody's a fop of Big Pharma or anything like that. I don't see that. I don't see any great grand conspiracy. But I do see a lack of education. I don't mean it in the way of like going to school. I mean, I think there's a lack of they're not aware of where modern day medical marijuana is. And I think there's a lot of fear of that. And I think there's a lot of people who sort of get stuck in their pat thing of like, well, here's what the double-blind studies say. And I think, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it was pointed out today that one of the members talked about a double-blind study that was done, the VA approved, that said medical marijuana was a precursor to PTSD. Well, to me, that struck me as quite insincere, because it's like, well, when would that occur? Like if somebody was in the battlefield before they got shot or after, and they couldn't, nobody could, and then we weren't supplied with the information, so that, and then it was a rules violation because we had to go back and say, well, you didn't give me the double-blind study before this meeting. And, you know, you hate to pull a technicality on somebody, but I did do that. And I did it because when John Evans gave evidence in the form of he passed out a flyer at one of our early meetings, the first meeting actually, a year and a half ago, that had a story about a soldier who had come back and was married and had kids who couldn't, I mean, it's very sad. He couldn't get back into society. He couldn't deal with his family. He became homeless and he killed himself. And one of the members of the panel said, well, this did not come in over the transom in the correct manner, and you have to take this back. So we all had to pass back the information. And in the last two meetings, the so to speak, marijuana people had put in information that was viable information. They had done that in the same manner. And I protested it today. And I think it was important to point it out that fair is fair. Rules are rules. But, you know, Mike, when you're in court, you have rules. We have all these rules of Robert's Rules of Order, these meetings, so it shouldn't be loose and free when people don't follow the rules, right? And so I think that was recognized by the physicians on the panel. I think Dr. Davis recognized it, and I think that's why they voted in favor of PTSD. And I think that was great, and I hope Director Harwood will follow the recommendation of the panel. It'd be wonderful. It'd be best Christmas present of the year, you know.
It would be great. Dave, can you recall with me that very first meeting of the panel where Park was voted on and approved by the panel?
Okay.
It's another one of those laws. Yes. Easily passed at the time.
And Parkinson passed 6-2. It was overwhelming at the time when everything was very controversial, on the basis of essentially people who suffer from Parkinson's get Parkinson's at a later age, like after age 60. So there was a feeling like among the panel, or I should say, this is my interpretation of the mood of the panel, was that they were older people who were not really going to be active in the workforce, so they were not losing any productivity, so the marijuana was not making them like lazy people. And then what happened was it was so confusing when the panel was dissolved. I think it was dissolved in late April. But Director Arwood made a statement on PTSD in like May 13th or something of that nature. Well, Parkinson's never got picked up again because I was told that the whoever submitted Parkinson's as a condition did not follow through and say, well, please continue Parkinson's. Whether that was consistent with what happened, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that John Evans, who submitted PTSD originally in September of 2012, I mean, this is just factually true. They had 180 days to accept it or reject it. As John pointed out today, they're well past that point, like a year past it or more. He came in May or early May of 2013 and tried to give him all his 700-page submission again. And Laura rejected it and said, no, we're going to use your submission from September of 2012. So the question you would have to ask, why wasn't Parkinson's given the same consideration? I don't have an answer for that. Truthfully, I've asked that question, but I've not asked it with any type of a vigor, truthfully. So I would say what I've been told is if somebody were to file a petition for Parkinson's again, it would be considered as a new condition. There would be a new submission, and I think that's positive because you wouldn't have to go to circuit court then. Mm-hmm. And I thought Parkinson's I think that'd be the perfect one to have everyone get together within the medical marijuana community and try to make the perfect submission for Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Because that is, in the end, that's the game, right? I mean,
it easily passed at that first meeting, and I think it would pass again if it put before the panel.
People respect it.
It really needs to have a very solid application behind it.
You bet.
I'll tell you, the people who testified, they didn't testify. The people who spoke publicly at the meeting today after the meeting were amazing. They were great. I don't know if any of them are listening, but there was Josie and her mom spoke, and Steve Green spoke. Johnny Evans spoke. There was almost the whole. There was the Lansing head of Normal spoke. He was eloquent. A vet spoke. He was in the back. That had long red hair and a cap on, and he was eloquent. I mean, he was like. I don't think PTSD is just a veterans issue. I don't ever want to go on record as saying that. I think it's an issue of victims. It's an issue of people who've been exposed to traumatic things in their life that have made it so they just can't get over them, and they are haunted by them. And man, I feel for those people. And I think if medical marijuana can help them have that moment of serenity where they don't have to think about it in the front of their brain, I think it's a blessing, and I think it's a good thing. And that's, I think what I've tried to put forth on this committee. Not trying to make a legalization or push any type of a political agenda, but just try to say, look, these people who are suffering from these ailments who can come forth, and the pattern is they are good people and they need this support.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for your efforts on that panel, Dave, and thank you for calling in.
I don't do it often.
You've been asked before, and I hope you can come again. And and I hope we have new good news to report in the future.
Yeah, very informative.
Best wishes.
Yep, great segment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. And it's always good to have good news on the law, right? The law that it's actually working.
I know, man. That's the truth. This was the best day in weeks. It's like this is wonderful. The people who spoke up at this meeting, man, I have the highest regard for. I truly do.
Thank you to all those people that testified.
Very well said. All right, thank you very much.
Nice.
David Brogan, everybody. New Conditions Panel, CPU founder, and fighting for the what's next, Parkinson's, and I think we're gonna have another go around with autism. It sounds like. I think that was another.
Sounds like we're gonna need a team.
We are. Yeah, all right, so listen, we've got about 57 minutes left. I know that we've got our next guest in the queue. We're going to take a quick break and come right back and listen to Planet Green Trees. Call numbers 1-347-326-9626, and we will be right back.
You ready?